My name is Isabel, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Liv. We're going to be going through her experience in the social media world, as well as her journey to getting her diagnoses that she has today and all the misdiagnoses that came along the way. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Liv to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Liv. You may or may not know me as Chronically Ill and Hot on Instagram and TikTok. I just share my chronic illness journey online, mainly my HEDS or hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome journey, and just share some humor relating to that. And so if we don't know each other on there, maybe we will after this. But yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to talk with you, especially about your experience in the social media space, just because that feels like it's a newer phenomenon for healthcare ecosystem. So, how did you first get involved in social media and developing this community online?
Yeah, so how I got involved was kind of random, actually. I literally made an account and I thought the username was kind of like funny and ironic because it's chronically ill and hot. We're hot because our joints hurt and they feel like they're on fire. And so I just made the account, and that day I posted something, and I don't even remember what it was now, but it just kind of took off a little bit. It didn't go mega viral by any means, but it got more views than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, because before that, like I had only been in a chronic illness support. Like I literally just had joined a chronic illness support group for the first time after years and years of, being misdiagnosed, diagnosed over and over again. I just joined something on Facebook the month before, but I was like, it was a little different. And I was looking for more community than that. It was good for like resources, but when I joined that TikTok page, it just felt like kind of what I was looking for, just relating to people who I just felt finally truly understood in this kind of part of my life. And it felt really good. And so I just started continuing. And now it's been, oh gosh, I guess it's been like a year and a half now. And I just kind of kept going. And it's been, it's been amazing connecting with so many people.
Yeah. What role do you see social media playing in shaping the conversation around chronic conditions, and whether that be on the path of getting a diagnosis or feeling gaslit or misunderstood or trying to advocate for yourself, like whatever that spectrum of conversation is around it? What is your perspective and your experience being in that community?
Well, when I joined, I was diagnosed with completely different things. I was misdiagnosed. And so at the time, I didn't know that. I had my suspicions, but once I joined and I kind of saw people who had things in common with me, symptom wise, because not everybody had RA and fibromyalgia that I was talking to on there. And those were the things that I was previously misdiagnosed with. And I just started seeing people who really resembled what I was going through, and they were all people with something called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I was in the process of getting a POTS diagnosis, and my doctor was sending me to people trying to find somebody who knew something about dysautonomia. And so when I learned, there was a connection there, and like I was diagnosed with hypermobility syndrome, didn't really know what that meant. And I started learning from all of these pages and just kind of talking to doctors about the things that I learned, like, hey, there's this thing that I was reading about, and I was wondering if, I might be able to get tested for it, whatever that entails. I had no idea it's such a wild goose chase
Yeah.
to try to get diagnosed when I first asked, but it just pointed me in the right direction. I think just seeing people who were having the same issues as I was, it just, I wasn't entirely sure if I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome at the time, like when I first started seeing these videos, but it seemed like, because I wasn't like, studying it like a book when I was just seeing these things, but I was like, oh, that might be a good start and there's so many connective tissue disorders. So it was a good start, and it did end up being what I had in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for so many people, they can relate because they sometimes when you are just starting from scratch or like you're misdiagnosed and questioning it, you just want somewhere, you just want to know what the right direction is. And there's so many specialists out there, so it can kind of help guide you a little bit. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. But at least it's somewhere to start looking.
Yeah. I think to your point, it's from my limited exposure and experience with social media is that there is this opportunity for an education purpose, and it's not necessarily like let's use TikTok to get diagnosed. It's more like let's use this space where there are so many people who are existing all at once, who all have a wide range of experiences that they are open and willing to share. And then I can take that information and see how it relates to my own life, and then talk with my provider about it for, further testing or diagnosis or treatment journeys.
That's exactly right. And kind of piggybacking off of that, I know like there's some, sometimes people think that you just get on social media and you are like, oh, like you see one video of, especially it seems there's kind of this stigma around hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or maybe even Ehlers-Danlos syndrome in general, and maybe other conditions. But I think sometimes people think you just see one video of a condition, let's just say EDS, and they're like, oh, well, that's what I have. It's 9 times out of 10, it's not like that for people. I think that exactly as you said, it's more just people seeing things and taking those to their doctor and being like, can we look into this? Like, at least look into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. I've definitely noticed online that there are conversations happening with people painting a very broad brush picture of saying, oh, people are using social media for self-diagnosing and over-diagnosing because it's cool and trendy. And
Right.
it's nice to hear from people in the community that that's not necessarily the case of what's happening, boots on the ground.
Right, for sure. I think people just want to know what's going on in their bodies. And I like, I'm sure people, I don't really see much of people who are just like simply hypermobile and automatically think that they have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've maybe met one person who thought that. And as soon as they realized that was not the case, they're like, oh, never mind, I'm just hypermobile. Like people, it's usually not something that somebody would continue with, I would think. But again, it's just people wanting to know what's going on in their body. And nobody, like I personally, I have not self-diagnosed myself with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I was, clinically evaluated and diagnosed, but I'm never going to be like, oh, like you shouldn't do that, because it's not like there is anything with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome where somebody is going to go out and like start medicating themselves. And you would, if there was any medication specifically for hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I'm not aware of anything that is just strictly for hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or else I would love to be on it. But I I think it's more just like people, if they are self-diagnosing themselves with that, then they're just like looking at guidelines, what I can do to help myself feel better, like looking at people's, hypermobile physical therapy type videos and stuff like that. And I see the benefit in that. And I'm never going to be somebody who's like, you shouldn't do that, because I can see how that would benefit people. And I know I've been in the boat where it was extremely difficult to get a clinical evaluation in the first place, to even find somebody who was not only willing to do it, but to just find somebody who knew what it was in the first place. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. So what do you think has been the most positive aspect of having this online community that either you've cultivated with your own community or communities that you've been a part of?
What is the biggest benefit of it? Well, one, just seeing people like yourself, and for so many reasons. I think just having people that you can relate to and can relate to your specific experience, because you can talk to friends and family members about it, but one, at a certain point, like, you don't want, like, I don't like to just share so much with friends and family, because I want to catch up with them on other things
Yeah.
too. And at the end of the day, unless somebody is really going through the same thing, they don't entirely understand, and that's okay. But it is nice to talk to people about these specific experiences, about people who really do understand.
Mhm.
And also crowdsourcing as well, crowdsourcing information, and not necessarily, and this is not the same as giving medical advice online, because that can be dangerous.
Yeah.
But if you are crowdsourcing information, like if somebody's like, oh, I have this set of symptoms, does anyone know what type of doctor I might want to go to for that, that can be very beneficial. And I've seen that a lot. I've used it for that purpose myself. And that's I think that's incredibly helpful for people. And I think it's helpful for so many reasons. And I didn't really, I mean, I wish I would have known that there was a community like this sooner, or else
Mhm.
I definitely would have joined sooner. But at the same time, I think I joined at the perfect time, because there's so many people on right now that may not have been on a few years ago. And so I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah. It was interesting. I don't know if you remember this, but during the live that we had for collecting user feedback, and we were asking about, what were the things that people did initially when they first got a diagnosis, and one of the pros that they would have recommended to their earlier self or other people just starting out in their chronic condition journey is to go to social media platforms and find people who have had this condition for a while and can kind of speak to their own personal experience with it, and also provide some level of humor, which, at least in the live, they're referencing your content for that purpose.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I think all of those elements are so beneficial to patients. And I think the humor is just so freaking important and underrated, because I mean, sometimes you just want to laugh at it, because it's so, like, when I think about the stuff that my body does, I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous. Like, I've dislocated something reaching off the bed to pick something up, and it's not like I was just like, really hyperextending my arm out there. So I just had to laugh at it. I'm like, really, this is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that so many people out there can do the same thing, and we can all kind of bond over those experiences. I love it. I love that element of it.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges or downsides from your experience for using social media when discussing healthcare or chronic conditions?
So I guess there's a couple different angles to this, because if you're somebody who's more, like, if you're the one posting, then it's kind of a different ball game. It just in general, looking for this kind of information, some things you have to take with a grain of salt. Like, for example, there are so many connective tissue disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's Marfan's syndrome, and there's all these different types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and some of them can share a lot of similar traits. So sometimes in the beginning, like, if you're looking into something like that, it could be something, and then it could also turn out to be something else. So definitely, using social media's information is beneficial, but don't be surprised if it ends up being something different, because you never know. And bodies are weird. Bodies are also changing all the time. And so don't beat yourself up if you're wrong about it, or even if you are like me and you got misdiagnosed in the first place, and then, like, you tell all these people, and then because you kind of feel like very silly having to tell people, yeah, it turns out I didn't have that. Because you feel like it feels a little bit like it makes you feel a little bit of shame almost. But there's really no reason to feel that way. Like I said, bodies are weird.
They are weird.
And so you just never know. They're crazy weird.
Yeah.
And they're just like doing whatever they want. So you never know. And if you are the one posting content relating to chronic illness, it's I would say definitely be careful. Definitely guard yourself in so many ways. Guard your privacy because it is still the internet at the end of the day. So definitely don't give out too many personal details. Now that's coming, that might sound hypocritical coming from somebody who shares my health journey, but I would say, like, try to be careful to not share like too many things that can even just tell people where you are in the world, like where you're living or anything of that nature. And don't give people too much that you might regret. And of course, like, you might change your opinions. Like, there's some things that I've posted that I'm just like, I wish I didn't share that, but it's too late now.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. So definitely be aware of that. And then also be aware that there are going to be people who, like, there's always going to be somebody that's going to have something negative to say, even if how you're speaking about something is like you're being very chill about it, or like whatever you're talking about, like it's the most mundane topic ever. There's always going to be somebody who's like, well, I think, and get mad at you for it. I mean, even if you're just like the extremely well intentioned. So try not to take things personal. And that doesn't mean you can't take criticism, because I always appreciate well intentioned criticism, but there's a difference between that and somebody just being like, I hate you, you suck.
Yeah, an internet troll
So,
versus someone who's
right,
trying to just
exactly.
inform you on something you didn't know about. So, based on your experience with having this community and fostering this community, how do you handle either misinformation or negative interactions online?
If it's well-intentioned criticism, I, try to just listen to it and think, okay, well, could this benefit me or my page and other people who might follow my page? And if so, maybe I will listen to that criticism. Now, if it's something that somebody is just being a jerk, I usually just block them, because I'm like, and now if somebody's just leaving a rude comment, I just leave it and I'm like, okay. Like, but if somebody's just trying to bombard my page, especially if they're harassing other people who are just in the comment section, like, absolutely not. Like,
Yeah.
gonna get blocked immediately.
Yeah.
So
that
that's usually how I deal with stuff like that. Like, kind of a no BS approach to people who are just downright being mean.
Yeah, it's kind of
But
like,
definitely like the
yeah, it's kind of like if you wouldn't say it in person, but you're saying it online, then you should probably see yourself out of this particular conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the well-intentioned criticism, sometimes, like, I've heard some things where I'm like, ouch, but they are right.
Yeah.
And so those, as much as sometimes things sting, like, if they're being well-intentioned, then, like, some of the most, like, ouch, well-intentioned criticism has benefited my page the absolute most. And so in the end, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Totally random, but do you have any specific examples that you would want to share or no?
Yeah, I definitely could. There was one point in time where somebody had said something like, be careful about presenting things very negative. And now it's kind of like a loaded statement, and they put like a lot more into the comment. But at the time, I was just like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, there is negativity that comes along with it, and, like, I'm allowed to share that aspect. Mm-hmm. And, like, I still stand behind that and think that that's true. And, you're allowed to share your experience however, like, you feel it relates to you. But I did kind of have to sit back and think, okay, well, more people are following me now than when I started, and more teenagers are following me now than when I started. And so I definitely want to be more careful to not make anything seem like just so dark, and like make people think, it's something that you like you can't get out of a certain headspace when you're in a chronic illness or when you have a chronic illness, because you can absolutely still be happy and live a fulfilled life living with a chronic illness. And so I started being more careful to not just not post, like if I'm going to post something that like sounds a little negative, like I'm not going to just like consistently post that kind of stuff, because I just want people to know that like, you can still be happy and you can still have a lot to look forward to in life. And, that saying that all to say that I'm never going to me personally, I'm not ever going to look at somebody's page with a chronic illness. And if they are posting what some might perceive as quote unquote negative, I'm never going to be like, they should be more positive. Absolutely not. Like, I will never think that perspective. But for myself, I just feel like I do like when I'm posting things that are, at least like have, if they're going to be like in a more negative light, like at least be, like have a sense of humor about it or something like that, like for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's benefited me as well.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
So I have two more questions for you. The first one is, when thinking about this idea of, or I guess the controversy around using social media as a way of getting a diagnosis, or over-diagnosing, or for the worried well rather than people who are truly struggling with something health-related, what advice or insight would you want providers to know, like the people on the other side of the conversations, to be sympathetic or empathetic towards when they have patients who come in being like, hey, I did research and I found this information on, fill in the blank platform?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that in my own experience, I've seen some providers, definitely not all, but some who really aren't willing to look into conditions like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because they're like thinking of, well, this is just such a rare condition. And I'm going to share what my geneticist said about that in particular, that he was talking about the hypermobile type in general, but like, I mean, the hypermobile type, but also like in general, like some other connective tissue disorders, but he was saying it's really not rare like people think that it is. It is more rarely diagnosed, and we hear that all the time in the community. So hearing that, I was like, okay, like I'm glad to know that a geneticist thinks that as well. Like that gave me a lot of hope.
What insights or information would you want to leave off this community with, based on either your experience in the social media space, or trying to get a diagnosis, or getting misdiagnosed a bunch of times and then finally getting a diagnosis? Because you kind of have personal expertise in both. So.
Oh gosh, yeah, especially about the whole misdiagnosis thing. So if you're going through the same thing with that, with getting, whether it's misdiagnosed and having to start from scratch to figure out what's going on again, or if you are just right in the beginning trying to figure things out, definitely know that it is, and I don't mean this to sound negative, but definitely know that it will probably come with some pain, some emotional pain, as well as some physical pain. And that in the end, it will all turn out the way that it's supposed to. But when you're going through that, trying to figure things out, it's incredibly, like, there's so much emotional turmoil that comes along with it. Like, my God, like, some of my worst moments in life were when I was just feeling so defeated, thinking I'm never going to figure out what's going on. Like, am I going to die before then? Like, it really does feel like that.
Yeah.
And I know it feels like that for so many people. And so allow yourself to feel that defeat, but don't sit and sink into it. I know, like, it is way easier said than done, but believe me, if anybody knows this, it's me. Like, it will turn out, and you have to keep pushing, and you have to do that for yourself, because you deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve to know what's going on with your body and to not feel like it's all in your head. And you deserve a better quality of life with some treatment options. And there's some conditions like what I ended up getting diagnosed with, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that really doesn't have a ton of treatment options at this point in time. But who's to say that that could change in the future? And so far, at least knowing that I have that, it's allowed me to make different changes in my life that have really benefited me. So I don't say keep pushing to tell you that you're not trying hard enough, because that is not the case. If anybody is going through that, I know exactly how hard you are trying to get a diagnosis and how defeating it feels. But I say keep pushing because you deserve it, because you deserve an answer.
Yeah.
So that would be my answer.
Yeah, that's awesome advice.
Thank you.
Dovetailing off of that, actually, that reminded me of another thing that I wanted to bring up with you. What role do you see technology playing in this space of advocacy and facilitating conversations with providers?
That is such a good question. So, I mean, for one, like what you guys are doing at Guava, if I would have known about Guava sooner, I was thinking like, so when I really started cracking down, trying to figure out what was going on, it was 2018. And if there would have been something that like Guava at the time, it would have just made the experience so much easier. And then by the time I got diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that was, I found out about you guys sometime after that, but it would have just made it so much easier to get diagnosed if I had something like that. Because, you know, you can track your symptoms in your notes app like I used to, but it's just not as easy to do that. And it's so hard to stick with it. It's so hard. It's hard to like even be clear about things too, and even just forgetting because there's so much going on. There's the brain fog. So you're probably going to forget. So I think that that's going to have a huge role in helping patients to take control of their health and take control of trying to figure out what's going on and getting the most out of your doctor's appointments too, because you have such a limited amount of time that you want to get the most out of it. So I think that's that's going to have a huge role in the future. And then also, you know, like we talked about, social media in general, having an impact on patients, and patients just being able to know what's going on in their body better than like things like Google. Not that Google isn't helpful, but sometimes like seeing the things, like seeing videos of people like showing an example of what it is instead of Google, because Google, like you might read something, but you think of it differently in your head than how an article means to present it. So seeing videos and pictures and things like that, I think are very beneficial as well with social media.
Yeah, I remember someone during the live was mentioning that, where that was a huge benefit for them when going to social media, because it was visualizing this person was talking about their experiences and their symptoms, and they would also like showcase, you know, let's say a rash or something, and it was a lot easier for the person to understand versus reading something online or seeing just a graphic of it. So I think that's a really good point.
And then like even showing things, like there was something that I saw recently, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but there's a creator called Microcat Machine, or Allison, and she posts a lot of hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and like POTS content. And there was something that I'd seen from her that she had posted, I think it was relating to POTS, and like gave an example of like what that looked like or seemed like. And I had heard that, like whatever she was talking about, and in my head it just sounded so different. And then when she shared it like that, I was like, oh, that actually makes so much more sense. And so when you see things like that, it just connects the dots so much better in your head. And it helps you understand your body so much better than something like searching something up on Google or Yahoo, if you're like me and old. Old fashioned.
I also think it helps with the feeling of isolation, because, for example, like ostomy bags, where you've had your colon removed or part of your colon removed, and so you have an ostomy bag in your stomach or off of, you know, your abdomen area, or wearing compression sleeves like what you have right now, actually, or compression socks, or any sort of mobility aid, like seeing other people going through their day-to-day life and using these obviously either life-saving or life-impacting tools is empowering, I think, because if you're in a town where you're the only person who is seemingly struggling with something, you're like, wow, I am alone in this world and this journey. But then you go to online, and you see other people who are doing it and crushing it and thriving. You're like, oh, I feel like I can do this.
That's so true. And, you know, speaking on that in particular, I definitely felt that way when I had to start using things like compression socks and compression gloves and different things. Like, I use the tape, but at that point I was like over that. I'm like, I'm kind of like, I only started using tape a few months ago. And then I used to have to use a cane, and it was so nice to see people online who were my age and having to use mobility aids as well. And just absolutely, like you said, crushing it. And I had gotten this message a few months ago from a girl who was in high school, I'm assuming, and she had just sent a message that said something along the lines of, thank you for making me feel, oh my gosh, it's gonna like make me tear up. She was saying like, thank you for making me feel more confident in wearing my compression gear to school every day, because I'm the only one here that has to use anything like that. And I was like it was kind of then when I realized how much of an impact seeing people like yourself can have on you, especially at a young age. And so that, if you see this, that meant the absolute world to me, and it definitely made me cry.
It's making me tear up, and I didn't even know that story. Wow. Yeah, I'm like trying, hold my eyes open in this call.
It was just like, oh my gosh, it was the sweetest thing. I love that social media has that impact, and that it makes people less afraid to do things that will benefit them, because don't hold back on doing something that's going to help you and help your health and help with your condition, just because you're afraid of what somebody else might think. Because if somebody else is going to think something of you using a mobility aid or some compression gear or something, then that person just has some deep rooted issues they need to work on, and that's not a reflection on you. So use whatever you need to help your condition.
Yeah, I think that is awesome advice, and I think a good stopping point. So thank you so much for joining me today and having this conversation, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well. And this was so much fun. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.